Okay, I guess welcome everybody for the 40B project. And before we get going, we'd like to do any housekeeping that's necessary. And Lisa, you have some new articles coming in from people who we ask everybody, all of the various boards to comment, and we get a couple of them. So Lisa, what do you have?
I have the two. I didn't know if you wanted to go according to the agenda.
Well, this would be housekeeping on the front end. I think it'd be appropriate here.
Okay, I received a email from the water department. Hi, Lisa. Gary Lorden had called a few days ago asking water main questions about his new project, and then mentioned that he had mentioned to the ZBA that he would like to give us some land. The Water District has talked with Gary about the possibility of acquiring some land near our garage a few years ago. At the time, he said it was tied up with his 40B project and there wasn't much he could do. Now that he is redoing his design, maybe this gives him the opportunity to do something. I recently talked with Jim Bezikowski, and he mentioned that Gary did mention this at board meetings. He thought that I should mention it to you, that we would be very interested in seeing this take place. We've been looking to expand our garage office for a while now, and we are looking for options to accomplish this. I know we hear often that we are not a town department and this won't benefit the town. It is true that we are not a town department, but the benefit is to all members of town indirectly through the water bills. Any savings we receive will pass directly to the water consumers, town residents, by controlling costs and limit any future increases to the water bills. So indirectly, I believe this is a big benefit to the town. We haven't finalized any plans yet, but we are looking to construct a building with a new office and likely a 4-bay garage. The land across from our current location on the opposite side of the F&L right-of-way seems like it could possibly work to cover our needs. I just wanted you to know that the Water District supports this idea and would like to see it followed through if that is all possible. Thanks, Fran McNamara, Lunenburg Water District. I also received a copy of minutes from the Lunenburg Planning Board. This was with regard to our request. 250 Whalum Road, Lunenburg Village, and these were from the Planning Board minutes dated May 12, 2014. Noted Zoning Board of Appeals continued hearing to May 28th. ZBA looking for any comments, suggestions from town departments. Matthew Allison opined that the name of the development should not be the same as Lunenburg Village, located in the center of town. J. Bellotta Simeone noted that it has been brought to the attention of the ZBA. Damon McQuaid, not in a hurry to increase density. Nathan Lockwood, pleased with recreation conservation space on Whalum Parkside. Both Nathan Lockwood and Matthew Allison agree that this is a positive development with tasteful site configuration and use of open space. Joanna Bellotta Simeone felt the ZBA is doing a good job handling it. There was discussion of composing a letter to the ZBA stating from a planning standpoint that this makes superior gains toward the subsidized housing inventory and provides residential support to foster local business development in the Summer Street corridor area. Motion made, Nathan Lockwood to send letter, second Matthew Allison. Damon McQuaid was not in complete agreement and concerned with town budget. Opined that it would not generate profit for the town and prefers less residential units. Matthew Allison thanked the ZBA for the opportunity to comment. Nathan Lockwood withdrew his motion and no letter will be sent.
I guess they're going to leave it in the good hands of the board, it would appear.
Thanks.
Okay, the one other point is there has been discussion through Carrie Spidell. She said that she would, I asked her if she was on the record or off. She said at her next meeting she would raise it to the Board of Selectmen in her thoughts. And her thoughts were, is it possible if we go with the rental apartments, can there be put in its place a over 55 component into the mix? She didn't know if you could or you couldn't, but because the grammar school over 55 and over has stalled out, she thought that that might be possible. So we leave it up to the attorneys to say if it's acceptable in the context of the 40B or whatever. So you can address that issue at an appropriate time. And I guess from there, where you have something to say ahead of what I'm going to say? Probably do, because you're
I don't know what
standing
you're going
there.
to say, so I can't say for sure.
Okay.
If you wanted me to address the point about the over 55, those are very, very difficult to do now as part of a 40B development. The state is a lot less lenient in allowing those to be done because of the glut of the over 55s that had occurred, several years back. And now it's very, very common to see an applicant who has had a project approved as an over 55 come back to the boards and request that those restrictions be removed because they're just simply not economic.
Okay.
To move forward. So that's unlikely. But I did want to note, I submitted the fiscal impact analysis that I had mentioned at the last hearing that was done in Chelmsford. And this was on existing 40B developments in my town. It was done by the Affordable Housing Plan Committee. We retained John Connery Associates to prepare this, to take a look at what the actual fiscal impacts were, not projected, actual, and what the actual number of school-age children were associated with the various 40B developments. And I don't know if you've all got a copy of that, but if you did take a look at it, the number of school-age children associated with the Kensington Apartments, which was 144 multifamily rentals that were 61 bedroom units and 84 two-bedroom units, and I think it was 25 total students for the 144 units. And it had a very significant net positive fiscal impact overall. When you're talking about 1 and 2 bedroom apartment units, you just do not wind up with a lot of school-age children. It's a fact borne out across the state.
Okay. Any comments from the board or so? Okay, none. All right, and you want to go on? I guess the first order of business was a peer review proposal from Mr. Hamway Engineering Company. That
According to my client, he has submitted. According to my client, he has already submitted the check for that. So we're perfectly fine with that.
I heard a rumor to that effect.
So did I.
So therefore, if it's satisfactory to the board and satisfactory to you, and the cash is on hand, I guess we're ready to go in that regard. And then, well, since we're talking cash on hand, I guess you guys and us guys are getting broke. So, Lisa, your concern in terms of the dollars, where are you at?
$1,354.55.
We up or down?
You're up.
Oh, good.
Okay,
So we need to replenish that?
okay. Then we have the,
Gary would prefer not to, however.
so we have the dollars in hand from for the engineering firm. And I guess unless you want to keep charge of this meeting, which you're doing a good job at.
I appreciate that, but I think you do a better job.
Like to hear, I guess, from Mr. Hamway, excuse me, on his proposal. It's an appropriate time to discuss that?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah. Now, we're talking the principal order of business is drainage regarding the site. Maybe you can educate us as to what the job task is and where we're going from there.
Well, as a review engineer for the site plans, we're going to review it based on technical standards on subdivision regulations and zoning regulations, the drainage, the site, the grading, the sewer, the water, traffic flow, parking spaces, everything that has to meet the requirements of the town regulations. And of course, once again, the drainage is a big item, doesn't have a specificness. Those go really with the state regulations for the most part and standard design practices. So we'll be reviewing, I've listed in the proposal 5 items basically in the last then number 6 and 7 are meetings with the design engineers and meetings, public hearing meetings with the ZBA. So we'll be doing the overall review. This is an initial review of the plans and drainage calculations that are submitted at this time.
Okay. Dick, do you have any comments relative to the subject matter, since you're fairly all knowledgeable about the subject?
I think the question is that Mr. Hamway posed is are there any other boards or committees in town that the zoning board would like Mr. Hamway to touch base with, or do you have the bases covered? I think you have the bases covered with the information that Lisa has provided, but if there are any other committees, and I can think of the Sewer Commission, Water Department, Police and Fire. Conservation. And Conservation, thank you, Mr. Wheeler. You may want him to touch base with those committees to see if there's any feedback that they have on the new proposal.
Now, how do you think it would be appropriate? Have him, through Lisa,
Yes.
draft a document relative to what you might or looking for information?
Well, I do have in my proposal to contact the various boards,
Right.
so that's in there.
So you guys-
Normally, I would do it just personally, directly to them.
So you're in charge?
Yes,
Okay.
if that's all right
Lisa,
with
you are
you.
not in charge anymore.
Yes, she is.
Okay, so you're going to touch all of those bases?
Yes, I will.
Okay, so that takes care of that. We're moving right along here.
The other thing I'd mention, Mr. Chairman.
Pardon?
The other thing I would mention, it is somewhat unusual for the applicant to directly pay the peer engineer. That usually, Mr. Hamway is retained by the board, and the funds usually go to the board, and the board disperses them
You're going to tear that
to
check
Mr.
up?
Hamway.
If you, however you
Go ahead.
want to
You
work
want
with
to
it.
make a
I'd
comment?
rather I can take that back, and tomorrow morning I can bring a check to the town.
Why don't we do it, and we'll keep everything on a steady course?
That's fine.
Sure.
And I think if there's any additional fees that you need to incur, you need to make the board aware of them and
Okay,
make
definitely.
the appropriate decisions.
I'll do that.
Just for the record, could you identify yourself? You didn't do that when you started off first.
Sorry, my name is Fred Hamway. I'm the owner of Hamway Engineering. We are a site civil engineering firm in Leominster.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple comments.
Pardon? Go ahead, please.
So, in addition to the scope that you've laid out, it's important for a 40B project for there to be a review of the waiver requests. And have you done a 40B project before, a peer review?
Yes, I have.
In this town, or?
No, another town.
Okay. So, perhaps you were familiar with that process of reviewing the waivers, and it's good that you will go through how the project complies with all the zoning bylaws and the planning board subdivision rules and regs. But then, what I found useful, and I think what we've done in the past with this board is to have point by point, does a project comply with basically outlining every bylaw or regulation that it doesn't comply with, and then has a waiver been requested, yes or no, and then what would you recommend? Is it something that you would be concerned about if we waived that bylaw for this project or not? And then what we would typically do would be then give that letter that you prepare point by point, probably in a numbered form, to them, and then they respond directly right below each comment. They'll put their response. Is that how you've done it?
Yeah, I would review the waivers, as you mentioned. I wasn't planning on responding to every requirement that it's met or not met, and/or
Yeah,
waiver's been requested.
I don't mean that.
It would be what requirements aren't met.
Right.
And if that is the case, that's the case. And if a waiver of that requirement is requested, then our opinion of the waiver.
Right,
Yes.
exactly. So
Okay.
just so we have the bases covered, that every waiver request they make, we'd want to know what your opinion is.
Sure.
And then if there's something that they missed, like if there's a nonconformity that they didn't ask a waiver from, to flag that as well.
Correct, that's what I would do, yes.
Okay, great.
Can I just interject for 1 second?
Go ahead.
There has already been a waiver list that was submitted and approved as part of the original project, so what we would propose to do would be to update that waiver list. And I don't think there should be, time spent reviewing waivers that have already been granted. It should just be any new waivers that really should be the focus of this review. Thank you.
Additional waivers to the ones already.
To the ones that have already been granted, correct.
Okay, you're all set then.
Isn't it, Mr. Chairman, isn't this project changing the whole scope of what was done before? So therefore, the waivers, they might be, those waivers that we did earlier might not be pertinent anymore. So it would,
Different kinds of waivers?
Different
you're
kinds, or they
suggesting?
might have been something that doesn't follow the scope as as it's outlined today. I mean, such things as, what might have been done for the curbing, so things like that might not be great, maybe we have to re-review that with the scope of this project versus what it was before.
Comments on that?
I think if we are increasing the scope of a waiver, then certainly that would be part of the review. But if the waiver is identical to what the original waiver was that was granted, I don't really see the need to take a second look at it. I mean, unless it's different in kind, which, without taking a look at the waiver list right now, I don't know, what that would be applicable to. But if it's, the exact same waiver and there's really nothing's changed, I don't see the need to, spend additional time on it. I'm just trying to limit the amount of time and effort and expense to my client, associated with the review.
Well,
So,
what I'd like to do is, since Dick is our quarterback here in many respects, what are your comments or thoughts on the matter since you're close to the waiver list?
I think it'll be pretty obvious when we look at the final list that there's some things that have been reviewed, approved, and there's no change. And there'll be some things that'll change, so I agree with Mr. Haverty.
So you're satisfied for the moment. Are you satisfied in terms of the...
I guess I would look to see which ones are,
Right.
looking at the scope, but it'd still be looking at waiver by waiver at the scope of whether we feel it changed or not.
but we'd be happy to also highlight in the waiver request whether, if there's been a change in the degree of the waiver.
In other words, create a check-off list of
Correct.
waivers to waivers so that the board could review it and be satisfied that there's nothing hiding out there.
Correct.
Of course, we hide nothing, but...
I mean, obviously would highlight any new waivers that are necessary, although I'm not sure there will be any.
Okay.
In fact, there'll probably be less waivers necessary for this, simply because what was approved before was a definitive subdivision, and this isn't.
Yeah. You're standing up there. Do you need to stand up, or are we all done with you?
I believe you're all done at the moment.
You can sit back
I will
and
listen
relax.
to the rest of it. Thank you.
And I guess Gary hasn't said anything yet, and we wouldn't like to have a meeting without him talking a little bit. So, the question is an update on the plans for the apartments. Is there any update that we should know about? Or
Yes.
What's new and different?
One main update is the name change, which we had talked briefly about, but the new name is going to Whalum Luxury Apartments.
You're
We left-
caving in?
We can't. No, we're being bending,
Or just
bending to accommodate.
No caving.
And now that it's changed, it's much easier to do than it was before. So we're going to Whalum Luxury Apartments. We came up with the name because of Whalum Park. Wanted to tie in that Whalum district.
You're
So-
trying to update it. What are you doing? The price is going up with the name change?
Oh, we stay low. We stay low. And the picture of the Townsend building came in, so that, just for the board members that weren't able to go to the site, I thought I'd take an opportunity just to flash it up on the board like Vanna White and just show, what the building,
ahead.
what the building will look like. This is identical to the buildings that we'll be constructing in Lunenburg. And some of the things you'll notice is that it has an 8-pitch roof. The significance or the severity of the pitch gives it a better visual appearance. A lot of times we'll go to a 5-pitch roof, but by going to an 8, it's a better look. In the utility rooms here, you can see the venting here. Our units are 95 plus efficient units for the furnaces with central air conditioning. They have air conditioning. We go to a direct vent, instantaneous hot water heater, Renai, which is incredibly efficient unit. So we're going high efficiency on everything. The building itself is Energy Star rated with windows, appliances, the HERS rated, and we get the kickback for the energy compliant building with the bath fans. Everything in the building is considered to be Energy Star compliant. So we spent a lot of extra money on heating equipment, domestic water heating, cooling, windows, insulation. Our sound transmission ratings are high. We have a nice stone veneer entrance that you see coming into the building here. So we've paid attention to a lot of the detail. We've given it better lines by breaking it up and doing shake shingles here and then clapboard here, changing the colors, going with the darker color on the bottom so it doesn't show up if you have any splash or anything. It doesn't show up as much as far as on the siding. Putting the freeze board, as you see here, to break it up, the railings between the units, so the turn columns. So there's a lot of attention to detail on the plans. Window caps with keys over windows, shutters, all of that gives it that ooh appeal. So when someone goes up, they're going to say, ooh, that looks nice. So it's full of it, you know, it's dressed up. And off to the far right, you can start to see some of the garage stalls here. And there'll be 10 garage stalls per 24 units. So there's 10 bays per 24 unit building. And in those bays, it has a electric door opener. So when the tenant comes in, they'll have a door opener, they hit the door, garage door button, drive in, get it out of the weather, come in. When they approach the entry, there's, I believe we have 9 cameras on the premises. So there's cameras as you enter the building, there's cameras as you enter into the entry. The mailboxes are in at the entry, but there's a number of cameras all over the property, so it's safe. There's a second, the first entry is an airlock, and then to get into the building, there's a fob, which you swipe to electronically disengage the door to enter into the building. So very safe, very secure, and very dressed up. So this is just a visual. Does anyone have any questions on the building?
Do you, the utilities included in the rent, or is that paid separately by the tenants?
They're separate. We go separate. They pay their own, it's natural gas. They pay their own gas. They pay their own lights. And we even have gone to the extreme of, because water consumption is important, we've broken up, and will break up in this building, every unit into a separate water meter. Not that we're charging the tenant for water, but we're able to monitor those water meters to find out whose toilet's running. Because in the bigger buildings, that's a big problem. When one is running, very difficult to find out. We've gone to extremes where we have to put dye tablets in. You know, we have a building that's 28 units. And when you have a bill that's high, you end up going around to visit every unit, and you're putting dye tablets in each unit. This situation here, we can monitor those meters to find out whose meter is running 24 hours, and then pinpoint it down, and then go right to the point. Also, the meters that we have are capable, not that we will do it in the front end of it because it's expensive, but I believe the cost will come down. But the meters that we're putting in are capable of being monitored by your computer. So we can watch.
So when you're in Florida, you know if you got a leaky faucet?
Exactly. If I'm in Florida on the beach, I can get on a laptop and I can see whose toilet's running. So, it's a nice idea because you can go right on, you can get on the computer and you can look to see live time whose meter's been running 24 hours a day.
You mean that ad on TV where that big guy is in there and he says you got everything done and the kids say yeah, and then he picks up his little thing and he goes yeah. Like Kelly did.
And then one other thing in the units, we want to have it be dressed up as well, and we want them to be durable. So everything on the outside is maintenance free. So all the boards, you see the corner boards, the freeze boards, everything is a PVC board. So cleans up very well. Not that it's going to happen, but a PVC board, if it's graffitied or anything, you can take lacquer thinner, but you're not going to have the rot, you won't have the decay, and you won't have the fade. So it stays up. The presentation of the building will always remain very good. There's no wood at all on the exterior. Interior of the building, standard items are tile floors in the kitchens, tile floors in the bathrooms, granite countertops in the kitchens, granite countertops in the bathrooms, undermount sinks, as we mentioned before, air conditioning. When we do the tile, we don't just lay it square, we put it on the diagonal. It's everything to make it just a little bit better. The other thing we do is, a lot of people think it's foolish, but I think it's a good idea and I think it looks nice, is that as opposed to doing sheetrock, because it's the lowest amenity known to man, we do blue board skim coat plaster. And it's our intention to go blue board skim coat plaster in the building as well. It's a superior finish, it's a nicer look, and it's, again, a better presentation inside.
Okay.
What is the ratio of handicap units? You've said that when we were on the tour, but I forgot.
It's basically 1 in every 20.
1 in 20?
And believe it or not, the handicap units are the most difficult to rent at the end of the day.
Any further questions from?
Yeah, had you, I believe the fire department expressed an interest in wanting to be able to gain access from the rear and the front?
That's a good question.
Have you been able to
We've
resolve
addressed
that?
that.
Yeah.
Wes and Brian, we had a meeting on that, and I said, look, let's address this at the front.
Right.
So when Wes shows his plan, I don't want to steal his thunder, but he doesn't know that I knew his secret little flip around trick. This area here will be grassed, but underneath the grass, we're going to go crushed concrete. And so it will provide a hard surface so that if a truck needs to access and go right around the building, they're not going to go through loam or a clay area. It'll have 4 inches of loam over the top of it, but the base will be a foot of crushed concrete. So it gives it a hard, durable surface so that if they need to fight the fire in front of the building, they can. If they need to access around the building, they can, even though it will be lawn. And we've done it in the Townsend building. We're also doing it here. We've deliberately pulled the parking spaces away from the building. So if there is a fire, the ladder truck or any type of emergency vehicle can access the front of the building without having cars in their way.
Mhm. Any other questions?
And I'd like to mention one other thing, because there was a question that was brought up probably 2 meetings ago that I didn't have the answer to. I wasn't clear on it. And I checked the regs, but there is a $30,000 gift of recreational equipment that is going to the town on that parcel here in the front. So that's also part of the project.
So you're putting that on the table?
It was already on the original one. No.
Okay.
Yes.
And you're maintaining it?
Yes, we're maintaining that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
It makes very good sense.
Okay. Any further? Is that it? You all done?
That's it. Short, sweet.
You got to do almost your whole pitch, not quite. I
I'm
remember
sorry,
something
are we supposed to be asking questions on the plans?
Well, of course.
On the plans right now?
Pardon?
Are we asking questions on the plans right now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, as far, you have 10 garage spaces per unit?
Correct.
Per building?
Yes.
Is there enough room to park in front of the garage without impeding the pavement?
Why don't we have Wes, the civil engineer,
That's fine, I just wasn't sure if this was the time or not.
answer that question as part of his presentation?
For the record, my name's Wesley Fliss, Whitman and Bingham Associates, with the civil engineers on the project. Just to give you an idea of the overall piece of property, and I know everybody's pretty familiar at this point. You can see the overall piece of property here is outlined in blue. Whalum Road here on the northern side. And to give you an idea of the scope of the project and how it was limited basically to the eastern half of the property, really left the western half of the property, and even along here to the south, southeast along FNL right-of-way alone as part of this development. What do we have sorry about that, highlighted here is the wetland here in yellow, and then the 100-foot buffer zone in orange. I know there was a question earlier about getting comments from some of the boards, and it was brought up maybe at the Conservation Commission. We don't plan to file with the Conservation Commission for this project because we are out of the 100-foot buffer zone. Just an idea of closest proximity for development is roughly in this area about 120 feet, and we're looking at closest point to any impervious surface about 450 feet to the wetland. So from that standpoint, we felt that this was a lot more environmentally sensitive with regards to the other projects that we have brought forth in front of the board. Just a benefit of the new layout that's in front of you. Again, just a closer version of really the developed area that we're looking at here. Whalum Road here to the north, and then FNL right-of-way to the south. The main entrance, again, is going to be off of Whalum Road, approximately where it was before. What we had done as part of this new layout is we adjusted a little bit to the west to accommodate the new layout of the buildings. And also, before, because we had lots on each side on the initial version, we were trying to squeeze in 2 lots along the entranceway. Because of the new development, we aren't trying to do that, so we were able to slide this over a little bit, better to give a a little better sightline, but also to avoid a utility pole that we had originally proposed to move that sat in the entrance. And so now we're able to move that entrance a little bit, save Mr. Lorden from having to have that utility pole moved. Currently, as part of the previous design, Mr. Lorden did bring the water and sewer off of Whalum Road, so that's already been done as part of what's been done also with the clearing of the piece of property. As Gary said, we're looking at 24 unit buildings. We're looking at 5 different buildings, similar to the concept that was brought forth about a month and a half ago in front of the board. We have the 5 buildings located throughout the site here, with also the 5 garage buildings. The garages, as Gary said, we have 10 stalls per building and 10 stalls per 24 units. I think one of the things that was talked about at the last meeting also was the number of parking spaces. We do show 48 parking spaces per building, be 2 spaces per unit, and in addition to the 10 stalls. So we do have some additional parking spaces above and beyond what the town regulations are. To answer the question that you had before, these garage buildings, the way they're lined up right now, they're about 10 feet to 12 feet off of, depending on which one you're looking at, off of the edge of traveled way. So your car can stick out a little bit out of the garage if need be. But the intent there is not to have extra parking spaces in front of the garages. Like I said, the majority of the parking spaces are within that area that Gary already pointed out, where they're away from the buildings and also away from the garages. The dimensions for what we're looking at here meet the requirements of the town. We have, in general, 24 feet aisle width throughout this entire area here. Again, the main entrance is 15 feet on each side of a striped island, which is 5 feet wide, to give that separation there when you come in and out of the main entrance. We do have a secondary entrance off of FNL right away, similar to the last couple plans that were in front of the board, where this entrance will be gated with a breakaway access that can be used by the fire and police department if necessary. But it's only there for emergency purposes only. It's not going to be there for access for any of the residents in this development.
I have a question that just tickled my mind. I got a friend of mine who lives in condominium arrangement, and you got the parking, you got some ratio and so forth. But in that particular area there, where he is, they have a free field, or it's got tar on it, but if someone's going to have a wedding or something to that effect, the overspill area, how do you address that kind of a need, or don't you?
Well, we haven't addressed an overflow parking area, but if the board would like us to add additional parking, we'd be amenable to doing that. There is, you've got 2 per unit, which is more than what is required. And then in this area here, this garage, even though you have install parking here, this one they can park in front of the building as well. And you look at it, there are 10 more spots, so you have an additional 50 parking spots added on top of the 2 per unit. So you take 2 per unit, then add 50 to that.
They're going to take care of 2 weddings occurring on the weekend?
For a wedding, it'd be a small wedding.
Yeah, small. Okay.
But if the board requires, if you'd like to see more parking, because obviously less is best for, impervious area, but we can.
I wouldn't want to be a burden, but on the other hand, if it could accommodate all of the social needs of the community, and I only raise that in that where my friend is, that's what they do, is they have a nice free overspill area. And of course they have tough rules, because if you park in someone else's spot, they tow you out and it costs you a couple of $100, right on the dime, because they watch it carefully. So they have the need for overflow.
I think it's a lot less likely that you would see that sort of activity in a rental development rather than a common development anyhow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of parking.
And just so you know, Mr. Bowen, is because we heard the comment at the last meeting, we did design this with some future parking if the necessity came about. And so what we show here is 18 future spaces here and 16 future spaces here. We included it in our drainage calculations so that we knew if the need arose in the future that Mr. Lord needed to throw in some more parking spaces because maybe there's more parking needed by the residents there, or maybe just by activities that might keep popping up through this development. We do have some future expansion there. So we do take into account some future expansion for parking spaces there.
How
34 spaces.
are you handling the garage? Is the garage an additional rent? Does it come as part of the rent for one of the units?
It's additional rent. It's $100 per month.
Okay, so therefore, so it could be either it's a parking space or it's storage for somebody. They can do whatever they want with that. So if they used it for storage, they would need, you lose those parking spaces.
Yes, but we're covered with the 2 per unit as it is.
I understand. So I know it's just my opinion, but I would like to see that each unit gets deeded 2 spots to do with what they want, and then there is some visitor parking spots designated for visitors that somewhere else. Because right now, you do not have a plan for, I would look at it as that if it's a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, if you have a couple, there's 2 cars. And I know regulations say you don't have to have that, but in most of...
I don't have a problem with adding more parking. I wouldn't want to mandate or designate parking just for the fact that it becomes a problem of policing and people calling, and we'd rather have it be open parking and add additional parking.
All right. It's, like I say, in your thing, it's, in the end, it's your units and you can do how you wish. I just look at it as that if I was renting and I ended up having to walk a half, quarter mile from my unit because somebody had a party, I wouldn't be too happy with you.
Mr. Chairman, just a note on the parking, and Dick can chime in as well. With our experience with these kind of projects, with 1- and 2-bedroom units, they generally don't generate a lot of cars. And I don't know if Gary can probably give you a real life experience since he manages these kind of apartments. My sense is that on the average number of cars per unit is less than 2. And it just struck me as that there's too much parking here. I guess I come to this as different.
We're talking about, we're in a rural area. We're not in an area where there is the feasibility to walk, take a bus or anything like that. We're in an area where you need a vehicle. And I submit that you need 2 cars. If there's 2 people, you need 2 cars.
Okay, I just have a difference of opinion. That's my opinion.
My experience is the larger rental developments, particularly in the 1- and 2-bedroom units, the rental developers who have a vested interest in making sure that they have enough parking are generally satisfied at a ratio of 1.75 per unit. I've had one approved in Andover, which is in the city. I've got one in front of my board in Chelmsford right now that they're at 1.75. We actually asked them to see if they were a little bit lower so we could increase the open space and get rid of some impervious, and they said they were comfortable going below 1.75, but they were happy at that number.
So you've mentioned 2 areas where there's much more mass transit than there is here. So
there's no mass transit next to either one of these sites. A walk from over a mile to the bus stop.
I feel compelled to get my 2 cents worth in because I have a difference of opinion from him as well. And I guess my inclination is to go with less impervious surface, and so it seems to me that the 2 per unit is reasonable, and I can relate to what you're saying with the 1.7.
And what we generally do is we ask if there is a concern about there being sufficient parking, which is exactly what Wes has done with the plan. It's what we call land bank.
I understand.
The spot. So you actually show them on the plan, but you don't construct them until at such point as it's deemed necessary that there is insufficient parking. And again, it's very, very important for the developer to have sufficient parking because he's not going to be able to rent his units if there's not enough parking. People aren't going to want them.
Right,
so
I'm just trying to mitigate an issue later on.
So I think, but the best way to handle that is again, to land bank it, not overbuild, and then if it's necessary, it's not too much of an issue to, put the parking spots for those 18 spots or whatever they are.
And that, Mr. Chairman, if I could just finish what I was going to say, that was actually going to be my suggestion, was that you can look at this in a spectrum. Either this is too much or it's too little, but in any event, you can set the condition that you provide 1.75 spaces if the board agrees with that, and then after 2 years you evaluate it, and if it's not enough, as Paul said, you've designated an area on the plan that you've banked it. But if it turns out it is enough, then you haven't built pavement that there's no use for. So that is a very viable option. I've seen a lot of other towns do that successfully.
I know a lot of towns have it in their subdivision regulations as well.
Something to chew on, huh?
I think the plan that's currently drawn, he's addressed that very well by going the 2 per unit and then adding the extra, what is the total? 34 potential, and by putting it on the plan, it's...
And accounting for it in the drainage.
Right, he's accounted for it in the drainage, and he's put it in the plan for future growth. So if, for the mass housing permit-wise and the paperwork necessary, it's already been accomplished here in the preliminary planning.
So long as when they throw me into one of these places by myself, my 13 great-grandchildren can come and visit me with their wives and their little offering. I plan to live to 122, so you can see the problem.
If you live to 122, I hope they take the license. Then I don't have to worry about those spots.
Okay.
Other question was on the movement of the entranceway closer to the recreation area. How far away are you from the recreation area now?
The sidewalks actually abuts the new property line that we're showing here for the recreational area. The recreation area, in general shape, has stayed the same. We obviously shifted it because of the entrance shifted, and also we were trying to keep the same area. So the dimensions are a little bit different than what we had before, but they're roughly the same area-wise with the recreation area. Like I said, the sidewalk's right up against that property line. The edge of pavement's, I believe, 11 to 12 feet from that property line. But there's, again, you can see there's a grass strip in between. Like I said, there's going to be a pole there in that grass strip, and then there's going to be this 5-foot sidewalk in between the two.
Okay.
Yeah, I got a question, Mr. Chairman, if I could. Could you show me how you envision traffic flowing in the project? Say you're coming in off Whaler Road and you're going to go all the way back to Unit 3 in the corner. Are there going to be, directional type,
if you look at
go out another way? How's that?
If you look at the plan, we do show stop bars and striping on the plan. And if I'm going to Unit 3, I'm going to shoot straight through, which I have a straight shot basically to the first stop sign I'm going to hit, or first stop bar would be here, and then be able to get to Unit 3.
So basically, you'll be driving in front of the rental units is where the traffic's going to flow?
Correct. And that was, again, as Gary said, a request from the fire department to get access to all 4 sides of the building, very similar to what he did in Townsend, where if there's an emergency, obviously they want to get access there, and so we're going to use that access as dual purpose. Obviously, main purpose is going to be access for everyday traffic, and if there's an emergency, obviously there's going to be an emergency vehicle there, and you're not going to want to drive through there anyway, so.
Now, when you're exiting the property, would you just reverse the way you came in?
Correct, yep. You would be able to reverse. There's 24 feet between the back of the parking spaces and the edge of pavement there, which is wide enough for two-way traffic, and you would just be able to reverse your direction and then go right back out. And actually, that would be a free flow. If you're going from Unit 3 right back out this way, it'd be free flow. There's no stop bars impeding your process there.
And that'll accommodate that monster of hook and ladder we got. We used to go, when I was a kid, they call it hook and ladder. I think they got a different name for it now.
I think it's still the same, but yeah, so the radii, all the radii within the project are intended for emergency vehicles, tractor trailers, so forth, whatever you need to get in there for. And so that's the intent. And again, that's part of Mr. Hamway's review, is to kind of make sure that everything's up to code, so.
So the way this is configured now, there's just one named street, the street that enters into the project, Rogers Way, and
we left the entrance as Rogers Way just on the plan. If Mr. Lorden changes it to just being, a sign saying Whalum Luxury Apartments, and that's fine with the fire department. That's basically who becomes the authority on how they want to note, if they want to give them different street names there to make it easier for them to figure out what unit it is, or if they're just going to number the units. It's up to really Mr. Lorden and the fire department to figure that part of it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I couldn't see it on the plans, and I know I'm not using a technical term, but are there any plans for speed bumps? Because you just mentioned that there is a no stop sign from when you leave units 3 and 4 on your way out.
We don't show any speed bumps or anything like that at this point.
Is that the technical term, or what are they?
I'm trying to think of for the smaller ones, and I'm trying to think what. Right off the top of my head, I can't think of the longer ones now that they use. I think they have a different technical term for the speed bumps.
Yeah, when you do like a crosswalk that you have to lift up the crosswalk a little bit, I'd look to see something like that so that it would slow the traffic down.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say it's the crosswalk. You can't use it for the crosswalk for in front of the buildings. They have to be handicapped accessible, so you can't use those. But we could if the board, and if Gary agrees to, you know, we could maybe put a couple speed bumps in there. And I know now they use the longer, real humps in the ground there that don't do damage to your vehicle as much, so. So it's up to, I don't know if Gary, you have more experience with these developments. That's something that you would,
Case by case, but sometimes it's a good question. If need be, we certainly want to put it in because the most important thing is for children's safety.
Right.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I guess it's a matter of if it becomes a problem, then we can put it in, but if we didn't, it's terrible to plow, but it's well worth it for children, so the trade-off is obviously well worth it for the safety of that.
There are a few turns in the roadway as you go there that tends to slow traffic. I know that the Townsend project, one of the concerns that the board had there was the fact that the roadway was too straight, and that they were worried that gave people room to get up speed. I think it's less of an issue here.
and another option we could do is just throw a couple stop bars in between here too. Strategically place a couple stop bars so you force a stop, even if it's before the crosswalks or something like that, just to make you stop and then go again, if that's something that, maybe it's a different way to, paint's a lot cheaper than having to put a speed bump out there, and like Gary said, it's a lot easier to plow over paint than over a speed bump, so.
Okay. The area between the 4 garages in the center, is that going to be maintained as a field? What's the plans for that?
Yeah,
Is that going back?
That'll be grass and mowed.
So it's even,
Grass mowed and irrigated.
right, so it's even more concern now, as we mentioned that for children running across those driveways.
You're keeping equipment on as you did in Townsend, are you doing the same thing here in terms of
Keeping
on
maintenance.
standby equipment?
Yes. Oh, we'll have the loader on site, the snow removal, yes.
Yeah.
That's important. So there'll be a loader on site for snow removal. And these buildings are always a priority. They go first thing in the morning. We clean right to the curb, we clean the sidewalks. And one thing I'd like to discuss with the board, because I didn't mention it, I didn't have a conversation with Wes, and he brought it up tonight, but I'm very passionate about. He depicts having the sidewalks off 5 feet off the road. On all our subdivisions, on buildings like this, I would have a conversation with Wes because I didn't pick up on it, but I'd like to have the sidewalk go right to the curb, to the berm. And the reason being is, maintenance-wise is much easier, and the grass strip being on the opposite side of the sidewalk holds up much better, looks much better, because any salt or sand, if there's any, goes up onto the sidewalk. In the wintertime, it's easier for us to maintain the sidewalk, clean it and push it off, and also, and then come spring for spring cleanup, it's much easier, and the grass comes back much better. That center strip just gets destroyed from the winter. So I would like to have a discussion with Wes about moving the sidewalk directly against the berm, if it's not a problem with the board.
Does that define itself as a waiver from tradition?
No.
You see what I'm saying?
And I guess that's where Paul was touching on earlier. It's not a subdivision. It's not a subdivision anymore. It's a site plan, really, site plan review. And so from that standpoint, there's no waiver from grass strip and sidewalk. So we have no issue with it. It was just something that we carried over from the concept plan that was shown to the board before. So again, from our standpoint, from an engineering standpoint, there's no difference. It basically creates the same amount of impervious surface.
Okay. Any further questions? Carl Luck, Carl Luck, well, Carl just raised his hand. I'll just let him go. Carl's chairman of the sewer commission, so he wants to say something. Maybe that'll develop a little more conversation. We don't know.
I'm Carl Luck, and I'm representing the sewer commission. And we haven't reviewed a plan yet of the site, but I know that we had a lot of discussion on the original plans in gravity versus low pressure and so forth. I wonder if just at a high level you could tell us what is the design approach for the sewer system?
Even easier for you. So just touch on the utilities. As I said, the water and sewer is already off Whalum Road in the location that we had shown originally on the first design plan. The water and sewer is just basically shooting right through that landscaped area between the 4 garage buildings. The sewer will end in this area here. It will all flow by gravity out to Whalum Road. There's no proposed pumps here. The 3 buildings in the rear will tie into the manhole on the north, the south portion of the development, and then the 2 buildings up front will tie into the manhole up here. Similar, like I said, the water will come down 6 inch off of Whalum Road, turn into a 4-inch for the service here. The buildings along the way will come off of that 6-inch main off of Whalum Road. Same thing with the underground utilities. Will come right down through that grassed area, that landscaped area. And that was one of the reasons we kind of wanted to leave it as grassed area, because you have all those utilities running through there. Makes it a lot easier to dig up afterwards if there's an issue. The drainage, similar to what we had before, where it's all going to be catch basins and manholes. We only have one stormwater basin now with this design. The stormwater basin here will sit roughly, we're looking at the southwest corner here of the 2 stone walls. There's 2 interior stone walls on the property. I don't know if you had a chance to walk this portion of the property in the past, but there's an intersection of the 2 interior stone walls, and that's where that basin will sit, right into that area there. It'll kind of snug right into the interior stone walls, so it'll kind of blend itself right into that area there. The basin that we had before in the previous design was 6 feet deep. This one is 4 feet deep, where the water will only get to 3 feet deep. The intent there is kind of blend it better into the landscaping, and also because of some of the standards we have to meet, we weren't looking to really build the backside of that basin too much higher than we needed to. So that's why we stayed with a shallower basin this time, reduce some of the construction costs. But like I said, also it allows us to blend that upper portion of that basin better into the existing landscaped area there. So it isn't as obvious that it's a detention basin that sits into the site. I know at the last meeting, I think Gary pointed out, and I think any of the members that went on the site visit, there is going to be landscaping around the building. We also do show some street trees on the site. We show our typical hay bale sill fence. Our construction entrance will be off of Rogers Way, off of Whalum Road, which again, the proposed road name is Rogers Way at this point. That was carried over from the previous plan. We do, on some of the plans, we do show a construction erosion control plan. We also show the snow storage plan that we had previous, so the board can see that. On a development like this, I know Gary said he's going to have a machine out there, but there's plenty of space for snow storage now. I know before it was concern of the board with some of the previous developments, but we continued with that plan that we had previously. Just quickly, just to wrap up, just so benefits of I think from this plan, from the previous plan, just so you know, we're looking at about a little more than 5 acres of impervious surface of the plan that we have in front of you right now. The plan that we had previous with the 80 units, we were about 9.5 acres of impervious surface. So there's a large reduction in impervious surface. And even with the plan that you approved with 64 units, we were at 7.2 acres of impervious surface. So there's still a significant amount of reduction in impervious surface. So I know that was a question of the board, obviously, already this evening about how many parking spaces. So we do have a significant reduction of impervious surface with this layout that we have in front of the board this evening. So I just want to throw those numbers at you to, be able to compare the other 3 options or other 2 options that you have in front of you before. So just, yeah, Gary, just want to make sure that the board knew is, with regards to the water protection, we do show hydrants here. It was requested before that there was an extra hydrant at Whalum Road, and so we did continue with that request from the water department at the time. And we also show 2 extra hydrants within the development to service the fire protection out here at the development.
The landscape, we've talked about allowing the, now that unfortunately because of of earlier, there's not many trees left on the property. The question is going to be now is the part of the property you're not using, how far back behind the units do you plan on letting nature take its course? What is the plans for behind the units? I couldn't make out the landscape plan from what you gave originally.
Our intention is to go back about 50 feet behind the buildings, landscape up to a portion about 50 feet behind the buildings, and let the rest of it go back natural. A lot of it, if you walk out there, is already coming back with a vengeance.
Right, so you'll be maintaining some kind of...
We want a 50-foot strip around the back side of the building, mainly for fire accessibility if they need to get back there. Plus, I've got this thing for kids and playing and stuff. It's nice to have an area for them to let it rip. So... I also, if I could take a moment, one of the letters that came in earlier from the Water District, their building is located here, the Water District, and the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. The piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. And the piece of land that they're referring to is this area here. there's a big portion of area here that we're not using, where before we had planned homes there. So there's a large area here, and we thought it would be, besides donating this piece to the ball field, that it would serve a better purpose if the town of Lunenburg or the water district owned this portion of land as well. So we talked about what we'd have to do is we'd just parcel out whatever they thought they needed.
Excuse me, I want to make sure I understood what you said. You said the water district owns it, or is that what you're donating?
Donating.
That's what you're donating?
Well, I'd need to have a discussion with the board and the water district, but we're not using this parcel of land over here now. There's a very large parcel of land here that we're not...
the parcel of land that I visited since the last meeting?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to put it in the proper context. So if that's donated, I would imagine it would be in their interest to work over that overgrowth that's sitting in there, I would imagine, if it became theirs.
I think what we're finding now is, from your walk out there as well, is that this area, the vegetation is coming back very quickly as well.
I walked there and I did recognize that it was vegetation, and I found it hard to even see the 5 trees that were taken out of that area because the overgrowth had reached that level of it. So it was difficult to see it, but then I also observed the water department when I was down there, so I recognized a little further down, that's where their building is. And
right.
so they would go across the other side into that general area, and I would assume do some dress-off.
Correct.
Regardless whether it's problematic or not.
And it may put the cart before the horse a bit, but it would behoove, if they did it, it would behoove them to keep the area that they were going to develop free of trees, so that they could not spare the cost of clearing trees again.
Yeah.
So we'd be amenable to, if they wanted us to, we would clear an area, do excavation works to make sure that we're sure that that would happen for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I have a question. How big a parcel is that? You said it's a large parcel.
If it was the entire piece to the south of the F&L right-of-way, it would be 3 3/4 acres. That's the entire piece. Obviously, if they don't need it all, it doesn't need to all go to them.
Right.
And that's why you're probably looking at maybe a couple acres there, or something like that, that might go to however it ends up working with the water district there.
Okay.
Just one more quick question. With the new plan, how close are you now to the closest residential homes that surround this? Just because of all the concern we had from neighbors, and now what's the plan for buffers to those closer homes?
Nearest property line, nearest home.
Nearest home is Rowley's. Right here.
Yeah. Also, there was the
Those are on one of these.
This unit here, to the property line is 71 feet. To the property line itself, 71 feet. And then,
these down here.
Yep.
Page 2.
the house, we're looking about 120 feet. 120 feet.
120?
Obviously, we had a lot of homes that were very close to it at that point. And we're pulling obviously all of that all the way.
And we're looking about 70 feet for the closest home there. To the prop?
To the home or the property line?
To the home.
To the home.
Yeah, approximately doubling the distance.
Okay, this one.
Right.
And in that area,
These
after
aren't-
50 feet, you're gonna
These
let
aren't
it
affected.
vegetate, and that's gonna create a buffer zone for those homes. After the 50 feet you had talked about, the grassy area, you're gonna let that vegetate so that there's like a buffer zone to those homes, or is there any other plan?
Right now, we were just planning on planting grass in the area 50 feet here and letting the vegetation continue to grow.
Okay.
So the answer to your question is yes, it would provide a buffer zone, right?
Yes. But we weren't going to be planting additional.
No, but that will provide a natural buffer
Yes,
zone.
exactly. Yes. And now that the canopy is gone, that lower growth is growing very quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions?
You never look this way, Don. He always looks that way.
That's what he's here with. His job is...
That's why we just speak out on this end.
All right, I have a list of questions, so if you'll indulge me. Just first on the parking space issue, I just want to go back to that briefly. If the board was interested in seeing less parking, is it possible to bank some of the more spaces? In other words, because right now you're showing about 2.5 spaces per unit with the garages. If the board was interested in seeing less, could you bank?
I could, but to be honest with you, that wouldn't be a high interest of mine.
You think you'll need it?
In the rentals, it's important to have parking because I'm competing against others, and you don't want to be at a disadvantage in the parking area.
So you're saying you'll think you'll need the 2.5 spaces per unit?
I think it needs it for overflow. I don't think it needs it for the actual usage of the unit. I don't believe it needs that at all for the unit. But on heavier flow days, if someone has a function or they have a Christmas party or
visitor party, okay.
I just think it's necessary to have it. So
Thank you for that.
I'd like to stay, unless the board felt very strongly about it, then I would consider it.
Okay.
What I would ask, Dan, is where would you eliminate it? That would be a natural...
Doesn't lend itself.
Well, you could narrow the aisles. There's a lot of different creative things you could do. I'm sure you could.
You want to make sure that if it was necessary, if you needed it, it's still there.
Yeah, right. It sounds to me like 2 spaces is probably what the consensus is anyway, so it's probably a moot point. On the drainage, there looks to be some sort of depression in the field, the middle field, or whatever we're calling this, the green. What is that? Is that another basin, or is it?
Yeah, the intent there is all this water within this green space all kind of flows into this area. And what we were worried about is basically winter conditions, making sure that all this water, when it starts to melt, gets out of there without impacting any of the driveways. And so we end up putting a low point there. It doesn't really provide any storage because the catch basin will provide enough capacity to get the water out there relatively quickly. Okay. And so it was just to funnel all the water within that green space out of there. So it didn't cause any flooding problems within the parking field.
I can understand that point. I guess and I would be interested in hearing what Fred's opinion would be on this when we get to that point, but it strikes me as that kind of interrupts the flat green area, which is frankly the only recreational area that you're providing for the project. And I think it'd be pretty important to keep all that flat so that you aren't, if kids want to play soccer out there or something, they're not just going down into this little hole.
Right, we were trying to get enough pitch for the water to flow in that direction.
Well, you can do that, but just you could, instead of doing a depression, you could do like a swale that runs along the road. Do you know what I mean?
No, and that's it was one of those things. Like I said, trying to prevent basically we've seen in the past is when they plow, they're going to end up having a snowbank in here. This is going to melt, and so we can look at shrinking it down. But we were trying to get a positive. We were going to try to get a positive pitch there without having the water sit behind those garages. And that's the intent there.
Well, I'm sure that
we can look at shrinking it down, trying to create as more green space is what you're looking at.
I'm just saying it just making it all flat so that this is a flat lawn area that's maintained. And
well, similar to if it was a field, and you pitched it left and right and had it drain around the perimeter to the low point.
Right, and I don't think it would work ideally.
Put a basin on the road edge, in the road. So we could bring it the same way. Bring it here and put the basin here, right? On the road.
When it gets into the road, the low points are here. And just so you know, Dan, as you're looking at up here, we're at 485, and down here we're at 481. So there's a 4-foot pitch from high point to up in this area here to this lower point. And that's why there's some pitch there.
Okay.
And so if you're looking for a general flat soccer field, it would make it very difficult to do that. It would create more fill for Mr. Lorden to really put into that area to make it work. and then he'd end up having to use the back of the garage as basically retaining walls. It become a, to be honest, it's something that I don't think Mr. Lorden would want to get into. We do show a very gentle pitch from here into that area, and gives a flat enough area. Like I said, we may be able to tuck some of this back here and still get enough of a pitch to get that water to flow in a positive manner. But like again, we were looking to not have any water sitting there because we know the soils are poor out there. We have high groundwater. You're not going to get a lot of infiltration back into the ground. We're looking to have a positive flow of the water, the surface water, out of that grass area.
I get the point. I think there's other ways to engineer it so that, but now that you've raised another issue that it's not going to be flat. So I guess my comment would be if this is going to be the only meaningful sort of passive recreational area or active recreational area for all the units, this is a large project. It's over 100 units, and
How big is the area? How big is the area? And then what is the parking drop?
Again, we're looking at about 485 in the back here, 483. And like I said, we're looking at 481 in the back there.
Yeah, when you go from it would appear to the layperson 2 feet over how many feet?
Oh, and that's the thing. It's going to be relatively.
Yeah, Gary, why don't you join them for the folks at home? They love to see your face.
But when you're talking in construction terms, when you're talking, is a 2-foot elevation drop?
So we're looking at a 1% grade here. So we're really looking at 1%, and that's why anything less than that, you don't really get a lot of a positive flow of water. Like I said,
all right.
A layperson will look at that and say, that's flat.
Okay, it's hard. I can't see the measurements. You don't have a scale in there. So so you're saying it's a 1% from
basically the back of the garage down to this point here.
Okay.
So we're looking at over 100 feet there.
Okay, so that's just something I'd ask Fred to comment on when we get to that point.
No, and just so you know, recreational area, we are adjacent to the recreational fields. Obviously,
that's not yours.
Oh, well, it's the town's.
I don't like to hear developers claim.
Well, we can claim this area here because we're donating that and we're making it.
Sure.
We're spending 30 grand on it.
And that's legitimate, I guess, and that's another question I had is what are your plans for that? Are you planning on, last time we talked about a playground, but is that still something that you'd want to do, or?
Yes, yes.
Even though we're only going to have 25 students, is it?
It's not just for the students here, it's for this field. It's for the kids in the neighborhood, it's for the area. It's for McNally Field.
Okay.
Okay.
If I may just add, fields normally have natural grass fields, normally have
You have to get up.
Anyways, sorry. Natural grass fields normally have a 1% cross pitch from center, like a football field, from center of the fields down to both edges, the sidelines.
Right.
Same with soccer. So he has that 1%, so it's almost the same, same.
Yeah,
visual,
except it's not a mound going
right, but it can it's still the same surface that they're playing on, the same pitched surface.
All right, so on the main detention basin, you're showing some sort of spillway that goes towards the wetland. Is that an emergency spillway in the excess 100-year storm, or what's that going to do?
Yeah, it's an emergency spillway and anything in excess of a 100-year storm event would overflow in that spillway in the direction of the wetlands.
All right, so the basin itself will handle the 100-year storm?
Correct, up into the 100-year storm. And there's an outlet structure here with a pipe outlet into a riprap. And same thing, directed toward the wetlands where it should be directed toward, not toward any of the abutting properties.
And what are we calling the 100-year storm these days? Is it 7 inches?
For Lunenburg, it's still 6.6 inches.
6.6.
Correct.
All right. Is that, given climate change and everything else, is that still accurate?
Still accurate. And if you look at Massachusetts, it varies across the state of Massachusetts. The closer you get to the Cape, the higher the number gets. And then actually, I think some areas of Massachusetts actually above 7 inches. So. Okay.
Over what period of time is the 6.6?
They call it for a 24-hour, and it's not a straight. I guess there's a little more math to that part of it, and it's tough to make it a simple number, I guess, from that standpoint. So.
All right. So the rock walls that are shown in the plan, those are existing walls that aren't going to change, right? You're going to leave those there?
Yeah, that's the intent. Like I said, it basically lends itself to a good landmark to start building that berm for the back of the basin.
Okay. Gary commented about 50 feet back and then the rest is natural, but you are showing snow storage areas in various parts of the plan. So are the snow storage areas going to be maintained or just cut on a regular basis?
Majority of the snow storage and maybe you're looking at,
Well, behind building number, is it numbered?
this area here, right here.
Number 2?
Yep, and I know he's talking 50 feet here, but 50 feet here. We do show some grading in there, so
Well, how wide is the path that goes around the building?
24 feet.
Oh, okay, I got it. All right.
So it's a significant.
So the
Snow storage is basically right off the roadway, because when you're running with a loader in the winter, you're not taking it great distances, and we can stack it high.
Right.
And if he needs to push it off, if we have a winter like we just had, he has some area to push it off.
It's ample area. It's great for snow.
Okay, so the fire lanes that go around the building, so that's going to be, I think you said, a base of crushed concrete, then 4 feet of loam, and then you're going to seed it?
Correct.
4 inches.
I'm sorry, 4 inches.
4 inches long.
All right. Okay.
Can you imagine that?
Are you still going to, in the previous plan, I think you showed some privacy fences for some of the abutters. Are we still proposing those? Or?
We hadn't addressed it, but this area here, we'll still, in this area, probably take it past the corner of this building by like 20 feet this way. So we'll run a fence here. I think that's where it's most important, is here. But I think that's the only area there it's really needed, is along this line here. Scale up what it is to the building here and exceed it by 20 feet.
Were you going to have one on the south side of the property? I can't remember what the plan was before.
No, the only place that it has any merit to have a fence would be on this side here. Everything else, remember, the right-of-way, the F&L right-of-way is here, and then there's another strip of land here. So we've got a nice buffer here.
Okay. All right. Just one thing I noticed, just looking at the parking lot, and again, there's just a lot of parking here. There didn't seem to be a lot of internal landscaping, not a lot of trees or shrubs. I mean, I see where you're showing some trees along the perimeter of the parking lot, but is it possible maybe to put some trees or shrubs in the middle of the parking lot just to kind of break up all the pavement and concrete?
We talked about that a little bit. And I said, I'd rather put more on the exterior of the perimeter, because visually I like when you come into an entrance and you're lining Bradford pears, so you see a nice visual. And then the problem I don't care for is, again, snow removal. They always get damaged. There's always a problem in the wintertime. And when you're bringing a loader, the machines are so big, and you're always looking to get that area. And I like to keep it clean. I like to get right to the curbs, and it just makes your job much tougher. I'd rather add more, which we did, to the exterior perimeter, and then load up the front of the building, which we've done, and it's on the plan, and the prototype is in Townsend, the same layout, and you'll see there's ample, there's more landscaping than less.
Okay. And you were referring to a grass strip before, which I think was, so the grass strip would have been between the driveway and the sidewalk, is that right?
Correct. You'd have the berm here, Cape Cod berm here, a grass strip, and then the sidewalk. What we'd propose to have is have the berm, the sidewalk directly butting the berm, and then the grass strip on the opposite side of it. And then so you'd have a little bit bigger grass strip on the outside edge.
So what would? So you're gonna have vertical granite curbing then? Is that like the?
No. What we'll do on this particular is it's proposed to go with bituminous berm, but if we can afford to do it at the time of construction, if our numbers come back right, and we did the same thing here, it was bituminous berm in the project, but in the end run, I put granite at the front of the building here, mainly because the granite is more durable against my loaders, and I want the front to always have that nice visual appearance. I don't like having my berm scarred.
Right.
So when we go to the bigger properties, I put a lot of manpower out there. We take snow blowers and we snow blow away from the berms. Always, we snow blow away 2 to 3 feet. That way the loader, when it comes in, it sees the berm, and then we can remove the snow from there. So I spend a lot of extra money on man labor in snowstorms, shovels and snow blowers and so on. And we will have a bay, one of those 50 bays will be dedicated to a maintenance where you will have the snow blowers and mowers and that type of stuff on site. So when they hit it, but if the numbers are working well, then I will upgrade to the granite as opposed to bituminous, but only in the front of the building.
Yeah, I guess a couple concerns I had with that is isn't the point of the grass strip to provide a buffer between the cars driving on the driveway or the road and the pedestrians on the sidewalk? If you eliminate that and you don't have vertical granite,
Off a Cape Cod berm, if a car goes off the side of the road, whether you have a 5-foot strip or you have 0 strip, they can still get right up on the curb and hit a pedestrian.
But if you've got a grass strip of 5 feet between
there's more of a buffer between it, but if a car goes over the berm's not going to stop a car from going over.
I agree it's not going to stop it. The point is that it creates some space between people walking and cars.
It creates some space, but your subdivision doesn't look as nice. And I don't think there's a big factor as far as the cars and the speed that they're going.
Yeah, I guess I shared some of the concerns though that were raised about cars going too fast along here. I mean, I know there's curves in there, but I think if you put traffic calming devices in there, that'll keep the speed down. But I can see people driving pretty fast.
I like the idea of the stop signs, and we hadn't talked about that, but I do like the idea of that. And if that didn't work, the last thing anybody wants to see, whether you're a developer or an owner of an apartment building or anything, I would certainly hope, is to see a child get hurt or from cars moving too quickly. So I would do it on my own if they were going too fast, if we were receiving complaints. Because again, bottom line, remember, if you have a situation where people aren't comfortable staying, nothing's more valuable than your children. Anybody that has children, they know it's the most valuable thing you have. They aren't going to want to rent there. So obviously, we're going to try to do what is necessary to keep people in the seats.
Right. So that's just one concern that I had that I'm sure Fred will address in his comments. The other benefit, I think, to the grass swale, isn't it, to provide stormwater treatment? To do it.
It's just a grass strip. It's not a grass swale.
Oh, it's not. It wouldn't be a swale.
No, it's not a swale. It's just a grass strip. So
Okay.
you're not going to gain or lose anything by putting the grass behind or.
Okay. Right.
It's just, to me, it's a much better visual, because after a winter, it looks awful.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm just concerned about the safety, and I think with a granite curb, that could be a potential condition the board looks at, is to provide that safety. If a car swerves off, at least it's going to stop. The wheels will stop.
It's cost prohibitive to do curb. The curb is just so expensive to do, and we're not in a high rent district.
Then we can look at the pro forma and figure that out.
Right.
I'm not trying to spend your money. I'm just trying to make sure we have all our bases covered.
But I could, to everything there's a give and take. So, if you don't spend 30 grand on recreational equipment, then yes, you can put 30 grand in a granite curb. So there's always.
Careful how you spend that money.
It's how you prioritize the dollars, whether you're building a house or you're building an apartment building. What has a better value to the community and to the developer? And as a team, you put it together, and if it's affordable, you do it. So I think that's what I'm looking to do.
And then last comment was just in the sewer. I'm assuming you're going to be pumping this. This is uphill, right?
Everything's gravity.
It's gravity to Whalum Road?
Yes.
I thought we had E1 pumps, or what were they?
That was prior to, in that area where the drainage went. Get this out of the way. It's easier to have.
Just to clarify, Dan, we were looking at gravity sewer for a portion of the residential development in this area here. Everything on the lower portion, when it started going downhill, then we'd have to pump back up. And so what we did is, in an effort to make sure everything was in gravity, we kind of built this one up just about a foot or so, and the same with these, built them up a foot or so, just to get enough depth for the sewer to get gravity out to Whalum Road, so we wouldn't need a pump.
What about the sewer for the other buildings?
These are a little easier because we're closer to the road. The further we get away from the road, it became more of a concern. This one was easy. As we get further away from Whalum Road, because of the pitch going in the opposite direction,
yep.
It became more of an issue, and that's why we kind of brought things up a little bit here.
There's a natural shelf. If you look at it from the road, you can see the shelf. It's right where the buildings are proposed. Comes like this and around, and then after that it starts to gradually keep going downhill. Okay. And obviously that's why they proposed the basins here, and after that it was down in here.
So are you increasing the elevation of the build area?
Well, I guess increasing. We're not really the way we tried doing this is we tried not cutting into the site so we can get that elevation. And so here we're probably about a foot above natural elevation because of, you're looking at pavement and so forth, the amount of material they're going to have in there. And so we're looking at kind of stay away from that groundwater issue. And also, like I said, to get some depth for the sewer out to Whalen Road.
Okay, so like a foot.
Yeah, and that's what basically we're looking about, a foot fill.
More shimming than.
Exactly. I mean, we talk, we're not talking 5-6 feet. We're talking about a foot there, so.
Okay.
Dan, while we're on the subject matter, how far are we from developing a draft in terms of where we're at?
Well, I drafted a decision on the original design.
I know that.
So I'd have to go back and make some changes.
Reshape it.
A lot of it will stay the same, but there'll be some changes.
Yeah. And you seem to be satisfied as in the waivers that's going to be about the same.
Well, we haven't seen the waivers
Based
yet.
on our earlier
Yeah, my concern was the same that David raised, and I think Dick had raised, that it's the question is degree, and I think Paul Haverty had mentioned that he's going to flag the waivers that he thinks might be increased or might be intensified, maybe is the right word. That
You'll keep us out of harm's way.
we will.
Okay.
But the next step is the peer review, and I think, just to formalize it, I think the board should probably vote to accept the proposal that was provided by Fred.
All right. We have any comments on what we've done so far? We're going to get ready to open it.
We had some discussion as to the date of the fees to the town, whether they were, when the application was initially filed, or whether it's as of today, sewer fees, water fees, building permit fees. I assume they are all as of today. Is that correct?
I would still take the position there at the date of the original application. This is a modification still. We haven't looked at that issue, and I frankly don't know what the impact will be if we base them as of today. Haven't looked at that at all.
You got to.
Privilege fees.
You have to get up here, unfortunately. Yeah, you have to get up. I know it's troublesome. We're going to put a little rolling cart back and forth.
Lapel mics and you can.
I know the privilege fees, aren't going to change on the per unit basis. I think they've stayed the same. So it was just that connection fee. I certainly haven't even considered, what that impact would be. I don't think Gary has taken that into account in the pro forma.
So can we carry that as an open item?
Yeah, it's
for the next
certainly
meeting?
An open item.
I would think that the board would look at it as the fees that were current today, unless you were requesting waivers. There were some waivers that were granted the last time for affordable units, remember?
Yeah, I recall that.
So
that was on the privilege fees.
Do you have a dog in the hunt here? Sewer Commission.
I can't speak that far. Yeah, the only thing I'd like to comment, because we haven't made it clear, but the Sewer Commission has taken a vote, and that the waiving of the privilege fees was retracted with this proposal. So regarding connection, that's the issue you bring up. But since there is no sewer going down Pleasant View, we voted that there would be no waiving of any privilege fees. And I presume that was understood.
You're going to be kind to them?
Well, I would request, Mr. Haverty, if you could take a look at it and communicate to Mr. Luck what you think
Certainly.
the fees should be, and then we could discuss it at the next meeting if there's any issues.
I mean, one way or the other, it should be factored into the profile.
Greg. We all set?
Two other quick issues. Are you going to get a new PE letter?
You're not going to get a new PE letter. We will be getting something from Mass Housing. I have I've contacted Greg Watson from Mass Housing. He has asked me for 3 pieces of information, one of which was a market study showing that there is a call for this type of apartment unit in Lunenburg. The second one was a letter of interest, not a letter, a letter of interest, not a letter of intent from an NEF bank indicating that they would be interested in financing the project. Both of which have been submitted already to Greg. The third one, though, is the pro forma, which was just handed into the board tonight, and I just got it when I got here, so that hasn't been submitted yet. Once he gets all of those, I expect it'll be relatively quick. that he will give us, the sort of a cursory letter indicating that Mass Housing is okay with the change to rental, and that it will address all of the programmatic issues as part of final approval.
And when do you think the waivers will be available? Will it be enough time so that we can look at it for the next meeting?
When's the next meeting?
I think June 25th is the next meeting, is that right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, June 25th.
Yeah, to be honest with us, is we wanted to get the review letter back from Mr. Hamway to make sure that we can come to an agreement on any open issues that we might have, and if any open issues are still unresolved, then we would ask for a waiver for that. And so that's kind of the process we were looking at from our standpoint of our waivers.
Shouldn't the list of waivers come first so that he can review them?
It would be very helpful if they could, then we don't have to do it twice.
Yeah.
No, I guess the reason I say it is because I know just dealing with the previous review engineers, a lot of the issues that would come up in a review, a lot of times we can take care of it. But if we have a disagreement, or if we can't design around a site issue, we would add it as a waiver.
I think we should get them the list of waivers, and then if after the review process is completed, there's a need to add some, we can do that.
And I guess that was the reason. We were trying to avoid reviewing it twice.
Yeah, you can always take waivers away. I mean, you can propose your waivers and say, well, we don't need this anymore because...
Well, I think what Wes's concern was more in the other direction, that if, as part of the review process, there was a disagreement as to whether a waiver was necessary, and there wasn't an ability to come to a consensus, he might need to add waivers.
And that's why I say we would only have it reviewed once, because after we have an agreement on all the issues, and if there is an agreement, then we would add the waiver and have a final list of waiver, and that would be it.
But we can do it the other way. I don't anticipate we're going to run into a significant number of additional waivers.
I don't think so either. I think it's...
Yeah.
My guess is that we're going to see a lot of waivers come off.
Right.
One of the issues that will probably be addressed as part of this is, previously this was approved as a definitive subdivision. Under the Chapter 40B regulations, if it's not a definitive subdivision, there's no need to request waivers of subdivision rules and regulations. The Board of Appeals can, as part of its decision, look to the subdivision rules and regulations as standards for road construction and that sort of thing. So technically, we're not going to need all of the waivers for the subdivision rules and regulations that were already in there. I don't propose that we're going to take them off. I think we'll just note that we technically don't need them, but we'll show whichever ones, remain necessary, so that at least the board has, the information in front of them.
I think it's important to show where the driveway diverges from our road construction standards.
Yeah.
So, as long, I think.
Yeah, but technically it's not a waiver request, but I agree that it's better for the board to have that information.
So maybe the first question is to ask Mr. Hamway when he thinks he can have his peer review done, and hopefully you can get him the waivers before that date. If you get the waivers in a week.
But the waivers are going to, from what I understand, the waivers are going to come, be finalized after the first review?
There'd be two sets of waivers, I guess.
Okay.
The initial request and then...
Then why don't, I should just have the initial waivers now. That way, if I'm questioning something, it's addressed as a waiver, and I address it as a waiver, as more than just a question, is it going to be done or whatever.
Yep. Okay.
So if you have a list, of course, now, then I should have those.
Okay.
If something's debating back and forth and you're going to request it as a waiver, that'll be the next set.
Yep.
Okay.
So can we put some dates on that, Wes? When?
Yeah, within a week we can have, and Paul and I will have to sit down and kind of, or at least have a chat about some of the waivers to make sure that...
And then, Mr. Hamway, you can have the review of the waivers 2 weeks after that, possibly?
Yes. When is the next meeting once again?
25th.
25th is correct, okay.
The board would like it a week ahead of time.
Okay, I'd like to get it also back to them before that, so that they can respond.
That'd be great.
And make changes if necessary, or have discussions, so.
So that would be...
So we're talking about getting it done in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, okay.
And then the third week, the board gets the...
So if
what was
the board,
discussed.
If the board gives Mr. Hanway's peer review comments a week before the hearing, obviously, we're not gonna be able to get a response to.
No, he's saying 2 weeks before that meeting, I think is what.
You'll get them 2 weeks. Mr. Hamway will get them to
Well,
Wes.
no, it'd be a week before the meeting,
We're
right?
talking
'Cause you're not
before-
gonna get the waiver list until a week from today.
Well, he can start reviewing all the rest of the stuff.
Okay, so you'll be able to have all that within 2 weeks from now?
Yes, what I want to give to, back to Whitman and Bingham.
Within 2, so then we would have a week to be able to.
Yep, and then maybe the third week have it to the board. 3 weeks from now, and then,
However, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I
That's-
understand.
that's what I'm planning
So
on.
what you're suggesting is, before you submit it to the board, give it to us?
However the board
You
sees
okay with
fit,
that
doesn't
procedure?
matter.
Sure, I am.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman?
ahead.
I have a concern with this whole thing. We've talked about waivers right now. Are we looking at it as that all the waivers that we approved before are still now going to be active and valid, even though the scope of the project is changing 100%? I mean, I would look at it as that we're almost starting from scratch when it comes to looking at it with the peer review and having them come to some decision, and then whatever they can't decide on, those would be a new set of waivers that we would have to.
Yeah, I'm looking, maybe I'm only the one person, but I'm looking at it is that you've approved a list of waivers already.
But that was based on a different project.
Some of those waivers are the same,
Okay.
some of them are going to be dropped. And then there'll be some that'll be added. And what you want to see is the ones that are the same that you approved, and the new ones that are going to be added, and you want to know the ones that are not going to apply anymore, they're going to be dropped.
So I guess my question more is that if we approved it before, do we automatically, does it become approved now? Even though the project is changing?
No,
You have a chance to look at the whole thing.
you can look at the entire
I
list.
just want to make sure, because we've said that if it was approved, you know, if we would waive it before, if it was the same, blah, 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 blah. I want to just make sure that with every waiver is an open
I think what they're
discussion.
saying is if you've approved it in the past, they're not going to spend a lot of time reevaluating that same issue.
Unless it's intensified.
Right.
I think that's what we talked about. If there's an intensification of the waiver, it's appropriate for the board to look at it again. But there's going to be some waivers, such as, do they need approval under the local wetland bylaw? Well, it's, that really hasn't changed. So it's probably not worth the board's time spending time to considering whether or not that should be granted again. But my advice would be most of the waivers, substantive waivers that this board granted, should be reviewed again.
Right.
It's a new project.
but what I understood was the waivers that Wes is going to get me is whatever that list was, 10 of them, 15, whatever, it's going to be a new list of the ones that are applicable to this project. Correct? Correct. Let's say it's 10 out of the 15, that's what I'm going to see while I'm reviewing it. There might be additional ones to that, which the board hasn't seen yet.
Right.
As the review goes on.
You're going to
Correct.
manage that activity in terms of what was, I would assume, what's now, which falls off the table because it's no longer applicable, and what's new. And then we end up with a spreadsheet that says, this is what we did, this is what's new, and this is the end product, yeah?
I think when the ones that get taken off the table shouldn't even be given to me. Just the ones that are applicable, the ones that were approved before from the list, from the previous
Something that
submission.
occurred downstream on the land that's no
I think
longer
Paul
in play.
Haverty could do a nice job of housekeeping on that.
I think it's actually important to note the difference, and maybe not as much for you, but for the board, certainly, to note the difference between the waivers that were requested for the original project.
Sometimes we're not too smart, we need to be
And the waivers that be
guided.
requested, for the modification, because certainly from my client's perspective, to the extent that we are minimizing the waiver requests, we certainly want to call attention to that.
Well, of course.
And I think what you're looking at here, and the reason, we're going through this process, it's a lot less impactful.
That's all going to be
use of
wrapped
the-
up in 2 weeks?
It
Is that
should
what
be,
we agreed
yeah.
on?
So there's already been waiver requests
Yeah.
prepared. A lot of the information is going to remain the same. If there are some setback waivers before,
Right.
we're not going to need those anymore.
Try not to waiver into August or September,
So I think the board ought to vote on this, but what we're saying is that Wes is going to provide the list of waivers to Fred in a week. You're going to discuss them with Wes and provide the board a report on your recommendation on the waivers by the 18th of June, which is 3 weeks from now.
Correct.
And to the board on the 18th.
And to the board on the 18th, that's what I mean, the board on the 18th. Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe I heard you start to make a motion to approve Fred as the peer review engineer.
Would you repeat that again? I just turned on my, go ahead.
Is there a motion to approve Fred Hemway's proposal as peer review engineer?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
You make a motion?
Yes, that we approve the proposal as presented.
Got a second? to that?
Headway Services.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the matter? I hope not. If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So done. My job's easy.
I see that.
Yeah, do we need to vote, do we need to make a proposal and vote on the timing?
Ray, did Ray make a motion on something
You
else
want-
too? Did Ray make a motion?
Ray?
As long as everybody's done.
Did,
As long as you're comfortable, that's what's
said
important.
so moved in Dick's proposal.
He makes a
Are you
nice...
happy?
Yes.
Okay. I love you, Jack.
Okay. Did Lisa get that?
Good, where are we at now? Say again?
Did Lisa get the motion that Ray made where he said, I so move on?
You got the motion, right? Yeah. I know.
All right, I'll second that motion.
Okay. We got something else?
No, just gotta
Yes.
vote on the motion right now.
Pardon?
We're just waiting to vote on the motion.
Made by Ray, seconded by me, relative to Dick on setting the dates for the review
On the 18th.
on the 18th.
We already voted it, didn't we?
No,
I thought I said all those in favor.
that was on,
And I
It was on the motion.
that was
Okay.
on appointing.
Second motion of the night.
Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, we got it. Okay, get things on target. Anything further, Dick? We're all set. Are we close to...
Did we ask if the,
I'm going to open the public discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
That's the very last.
Do you think I would allow that? He had every right to do me under if I didn't give him time. We're going to open it now to public discussion. You've been waiting there for a long time. So you got something to say, you just want to watch us. Go ahead.
Cable must have been out tonight, huh?
He just wanted to go somewhere warm.
The Bruins lost, who cares?
Say that loud.
Hey, Sox are on a roll, 2 in a row.
Two associates, yet there's 4 sitting,
Oh, okay.
so we can't have,
Oh, okay. I've been reminded that we have 5 people sitting, and the 6th and the 7th can't make can't make it or second the motion. But when we said we approved, it went across the board. It was 100%. Are we safe still? You think so, Mr. Attorney?
I think you could use some discretion to substitute the names of the people making the motion and seconding the motion.
What do you want us to do?
It's good. It's fine.
We're good.
We're good.
Second his motion.
Yes,
We're gonna do this again.
Thank you.
No, we're done.
It's
taken
done.
care of.
We all voted.
Yeah, logic drives me to that conclusion.
Should we bring up discussion about the water district and what they are interested in as far as the property at this point in time?
I don't, we
memo-
read into the record they have an interest. Is that a side issue? In other words?
The email from the water superintendent specifically said he was interested in the land across the street from the current building, so. I think you ought to let that conversation happen offline and then receive some more input from the Water Commission and the applicant before I draft a
Question
condition.
of discussion between those folks as to what they want to do and what is.
And then we can put a
intended.
condition in the decision requiring the transfer.
Do we make it conditional at that point in time, or we just leave it to the goodwill of
No.
the applicant?
We put it as a condition in the
Put
decision.
it in there, okay. All right, I think we're ready to continue the meeting unless we have more to say. You all done? Yep. Okay, the chair will accept a motion to...
So moved.
Pardon?
So moved that we continue to
To
the
a date and time certain.
Right.
We all in agreement that June 25th is appropriate date and time at 7 o'clock? Yes?
yes.
Okay, all those in favor of continuing this hearing until that time, please say aye. Aye. 1, 2, 3, did we get the 5 up here? Okay.
Right, 5?
So we're all set.
Thank you.
I think we did it. We're getting a little bit better in the time.
Thank you again for letting us come in.